All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's policy session of the Phoenix City Council for October 25th, 2016. We have a meaty agenda here today, so we want to get to it as quickly as possible. I'll first turn to council members to see if they have any information or follow-up requests. Ask that we keep it as short as possible just because we do have a long, meaty agenda today. Would any council member like to provide any council information and or follow-up requests? Councilwoman Williams.
Mayor, I have a long list, but in keeping with your wishes, I'll make it quick.
Thank you.
Want to remind everyone that Pioneer Village this coming weekend will be the last weekend of the Pioneer Harvest Festival. If you haven't gone, great place for kids, lots of activities and lots of fun. Secondly, I want to thank everybody who participated yesterday when we had the press conference and noting that the bus services were expanded and that Dial-A-Ride will cross all city borders. You get in and you get to go wherever you wanted. Big day. And thank you, Mayor, and everyone who participated in that. We have a huge GAIN event coming up at Cortez Park this Saturday. There's going to be over 60 vendors there, and you can get free flu shots. There'll be all kinds of prizes. So I invite you to come to that, and then Deer Valley Park in the evening, and remind everyone that this Friday morning is the District 1 breakfast at the Radisson Phoenix North Hotel, and that's at Metro Center. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Other council members, brief comments or remarks? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. We had a great weekend in District 8, and I particularly want to thank Inger and the Parks Department. We were able to dedicate the Muriel Smith Recreation Center. Both Councilman Nowakowski, the mayor, and myself were there to celebrate this, the legacy and great continued achievements of Muriel Smith, who is a wonderful community leader for District 8 and the entire city. And we also brought a new playground to Grant Park this weekend, thanks to the Fiesta Bowl Charities and Kaboom. So that was a wonderful, we appreciate our sports community continuing to give back. The mayor will be back in District 8 on November 1st. We're going to have a community coffee at Helpings Cafe at 3333 East Van Buren. So for anyone in our Balts, Sky Harbor, or East Van Buren communities, or any other neighborhood in the city, we welcome you and look forward to that opportunity. And then as a matter of requesting more information, I did have one request for information. Our public safety partners are instrumental in any big event we do in the city, including high-profile ones like Super Bowl and other big events. And one big event that is coming up that our office has been hearing a lot about is Election Day. So I just wanted to get a little bit of information and make sure we have a good plan to ensure our residents that we will have a safe Election Day for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Councilman Valenzuela.
Thanks, Mayor. Last week, I had an opportunity to co-host an event at the Maryville YMCA, and what an exciting event. We had our Phoenix police officers there, as well as about 120 students from the Maryville area come together, really work together. There were several activities, everything from kickball and dodgeball to role plays. We wanted the students to see what it was like when faced with some of these tough decisions that police officers have to make in a spur of the moment. And then we had a pretty direct Q&A session so that the police officers can see and understand truly what our students are feeling. And some tough questions were asked, and of course every question was answered. It was about a 3-hour event, and it goes a long way with community-based policing in the Maryville area and in our community. And something we're going to continue to do, working with all of the schools and all of the the partners that we have in the community. And I really would like to thank Joe Yonner, our police chief, for just being a community-based policing-minded chief. Chief Yonner is retiring after 31 years, and he's a Maryville kid, he's a West Phoenix kid, and I'd like to thank Joe Yonner for his service, and I'd also like to welcome his successor, another Maryville kid, Jerry Williams, to be our police chief, and we're all very excited about that. I also would like to share that on Friday, this past Friday, I had the opportunity to kick off this year's Smart City Hackathon. It's the second annual hackathon, and we had some great representation from throughout the valley. The winner, Storage Together, took first place. This was a student-founded startup from Grand Canyon University, the Colangelo School of Business, so it's great to see, once again, this type of talent emerging from our very own neighborhoods right here in Phoenix. I'm personally excited that, these students came from Phoenix's university out west in District 5, that being GCU. That was some great news. And finally, I'm looking forward to speaking at Mark Atkinson Middle School on Thursday. I'll be visiting a new friend that I met at a children's coding event, a youth coding event, I should say, Gustavo Chavez, who just became the student council's president. And so he personally sent an invite, and I'm really excited to see Gustavo and all of the members of the student council. And hopefully, I'm sure I'll be learning as much as I hope I can share. And so I'm excited about that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank everyone that it participated in the GAIN events this month. There were a lot of great neighbors out, meeting with city staff, in particular our great police department. And tomorrow, the Black Mountain Precinct has their coffee chat, and it is at 8 a.m. at Times Square Restaurant. That is 718 East Union Hills Drive. Also, we have our District 3 coffee chat on Thursday from 8 to 9 a.m. at Half Moon Sports Grill. That's at 288 East Greenway Parkway. We're trying to highlight some of our local businesses within the district. And I echo thanks to Chief Yonard, and I'm very excited to work with incoming Police Chief Jerry Williams. And just to remind everyone, have a very safe and a happy Halloween.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. All right, good. I just want to make sure the entire public is invited. It was mentioned a couple times that our current great chief, Joe Yonner, is finishing his career with the City of Phoenix this Friday, and Chief Jerry Williams will be taking over as chief of the Phoenix Police Department, and the entire public is invited. The swearing-in ceremony will be 1:30 this Friday at Phoenix Convention Center, followed by a wonderful community reception. But every single person in the city is invited to see their police chief get sworn in, say thank you to Chief Yonner for his great years of service, and to welcome Chief Jerry Williams back to the Phoenix Police Department. Who's on the phone?
It's Michael.
Councilman
Al.
And Councilman
I've been
Cecil.
on.
Did either of you have brief introductory comments before we start our busy agenda?
No, I don't. Mayor, I just want to thank everyone that went out to the GAIN events the last 2 weekends, and also making sure to invite everyone out to the Cesar Chavez Park, where we're having our first concert coming this Saturday, October 29th. Starts from 6 o'clock till 9 p.m. We're going to have our first concert out there. It's going to be Uptown Band AZ, and they're pretty good. So come on down and enjoy it. That's it. And one more thing is that Broadway Road from 51st to 43rd, it's going to be open tomorrow at 10 a.m. So everybody that's been waiting for Broadway Road from 51st to 43rd, it's going to be open tomorrow, 10 a.m.
Congratulations, Councilman Nowakowski, and they've been working on that for a long period of time. All right, we're going to move on our agenda. Next on our agenda is a call for an executive session. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, in accordance with a properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 38-431.02a, meet in executive session on Wednesday, November 9th, 2016 at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington in Phoenix.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Mr. City Manager, do you have any reports or budget updates before the City Council? All right, let's get to it. We have 3 significant agenda items, and we want to make sure we have a chance to cover them thoroughly and hear from the community, all very, from my humble opinion, exciting opportunities for the city of Phoenix. First will be item number 2 on today's agenda. Item number 2 concerns the city of Phoenix joining many other cities across North America and the globe in becoming a fast-track city where we would join this important initiative. This was brought to my attention by leaders in the healthcare community, leaders in the HIV and AIDS advocacy committee, that there is a strategy in place to try to eradicate AIDS in major urban areas across this globe. But it's a very smart, sophisticated strategy, and the request was made that Phoenix join this effort. And I wanted to bring the attention of our other council members and management and ask that we put this agenda item on and decide whether or not Phoenix can join this very exciting opportunity. So, Mr. City Manager, I'll let you start the item.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, the following 2 items today are important citywide initiatives that you've placed on the agenda. The first, as you mentioned, is to join the rank of fast-track cities, which are cities around the world committed to make our community healthier and without discrimination for HIV-positive residents. And the second is to join the ranks of age-friendly communities that are open and accessible to people of all ages. So the leadership of the mayor and city council in setting these priorities is critical. You vote to commit us to these efforts, and then you engage a broader community through committees, task forces to address the topics. And then staff will go to work with you to implement each initiative, building on a successful approach we have in place. Deputy City Manager Deanna Jonovich has developed a staffing model that has proved successful over the past 3 years in addressing the council's priority issues of domestic violence and human trafficking, and most recently, a youth engagement education program called My Brother's Keeper, or MBK. So in order, you'll see in these 2 items, in order for us to continue our track record of success, you'll see our recommendation that if we vote to sign on to them, we need 1 staff member to jointly support the committee work, establish baselines and targets, track and report progress, and communicate our efforts more broadly. That has been our way of achieving success in this. We have 2 of our staff members here today, Tamara and Martin, who have done that for MBK, for DV, and for human trafficking, and we would need to add a 3rd member to the team on these 2 very important initiatives. So that's what will give us our opportunity to be successful. And now Deanna will describe the nuts and bolts of both fast track and age-friendly communities with our recommendations.
Okay, so item number 2 is on the city joining Fast Track Cities Initiative. Item number 3 is Phoenix joining Age-Friendly Communities Initiative. So we're going to cover both items at once. We're going to vote on them separately, but we want to cover both items at once at this time.
If you'd like us to do that, we have 2 separate
Let's do Fast Track
presentations.
Cities first,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about age-friendly communities second. Ms. Jonovich.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm here to discuss a Fast Track Cities initiative in ending the AIDS epidemic by 2030. Go ahead. When you look across the globe at the HIV epidemic, there are 37 million people living with HIV. 17 million are unaware of their status. In addition to that, 2 million people are infected and 1.2 million die every year from AIDS-related illness. Also of note, only 37% of the people living with HIV are receiving treatment. The Fast Track Cities Initiative is a collaboration with local, national, regional, and international partners and stakeholders. The initiative was launched on World AIDS Day in 2014 in Paris, where mayors from 26 cities around the world convened to sign the declaration and committed to accelerating and scaling up their local AIDS efforts. The objective of the Fast Track Cities is to target 3 areas and attain 90% in each of those areas. The first is 90% know their HIV status. Of those that know their HIV status, 90% are receiving antiretroviral therapy. And of those that know and are receiving the treatment, 90% are viral suppressed. If we as a city were to choose to take on this initiative, as Mr. Zuercher indicated, we would use a very similar approach to other initiatives, which would include bringing together multiple stakeholders that are already working in this area and have a passion for this particular initiative. We would conduct an assessment and determine what is out there, what's being done currently. We would also identify program interventions. We would then create an action plan based around that assessment and program interventions. We would need to ensure, once the action plan is approved, that everybody in our community is aware of what we as a community are trying to do with this initiative. And most importantly, we would want to ensure that the resources needed for this very important initiative are mobilized within our community. When you look at the city currently, we have some estimated data that we were able to receive from the Bureau of Epidemiology and Disease Control and Office of Disease Integration Services. We're estimating 85% know their status. We're about at 51% on the therapy and 50% that are suppressed. One of the things we would do in our assessment, however, is ensure that those baseline numbers are accurate, and that's our baseline starting point to achieve the 90-90-90. I did go to the website and just look at another city that signed on last year. Currently, Denver has achieved in 1 year their 90% HIV status. They're still baselining the therapy side of it, and they're at 87% of the viral suppression. So we are here today seeking City Council approval to join the Fast Track City Initiative, establish an ad hoc committee, and establish a management assistant 2 position in the city manager's office to support the 2 initiatives if they go forward today.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Janovich. One may fairly ask the question, well, why would the city of Phoenix do this? We don't, unlike many other large cities across North America and the globe, we don't do public health. But the reality is that we would be the convener. The whole point would be the city of Phoenix to show leadership, bring together the healthcare community, both public and private healthcare community, but also bring together as many organizations that touch the community as possible to use our outreach and communication tools that we have to encourage people to know their status, reach out to people that may be HIV positive, to find out the right place for them to receive care, help them overcome whatever barriers they may have that's stopping them to receive treatment. What's shocking is that many people who know their status are unable, for a variety of reasons, to receive the care that they need. That was shocking to me when I learned that through this education process. Well, we've got to use whatever tools we have at our disposal to help encourage people in a very positive way to receive appropriate treatment. So though we don't do public health here in the city of Phoenix, we have a very, very important role to play as a leader and convener, and also look in the mirror and say, what can we do with all of our outreach programs, whether it be through our social workers, Parks Department that reach out to so many people, public housing, maybe it's our senior centers, anywhere that we touch the public, we have the opportunity to better educate the public ourselves. So I obviously I brought this forward. I fully support it. I think it's the right direction for the city of Phoenix, and wanted the opportunity to vote on it. Now, right now I have no cards on this item. Behind our city manager, I see a lot of people I know are very supportive and are going to be our partners and leaders on this effort. And I know you were probably asked not to have everyone speak, but we ought to have at least one person speak as to the importance of Phoenix joining the 90-90-90 effort. I can't believe with all those great leaders there that not at least one person doesn't want to make the case.
Good afternoon. My name is John Sapero. I'm the Office Chief for HIV Prevention with Arizona Department of Health Services. I'm also a person living with HIV for the past 27 and a half years. I think that this is an extremely important and historic moment for the city of Phoenix and for Arizona to openly acknowledge our HIV epidemic and also acknowledge the great work that we're doing to end the HIV epidemic in Arizona. We have just completed a 5-year strategic prevention and care plan to make the goals of the Fast Track City Initiative possible. And I know that myself and both my coworkers and our community partners are very excited and engaged and committed and passionate to do this work. And I would like to ask for that same passion and commitment from you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your leadership and that important testimony. Councilwoman Pastor is not able to be with us here today, but she and I talked about this, and she has expressed a particular passion to really be a leader to help implement the Fast Track Cities initiative. Councilman Valenzuela has done the same thing. He and I have an opportunity to talk. So I'll go ahead and throw a motion on the floor, see if there's any comments or questions on that motion. I will make a motion that we support our staff recommendation for the approval of the City of Phoenix to join the Fast Track Cities initiative, establish an ad hoc committee to be chaired by Councilman Valenzuela and Councilwoman Pastor, and establish a Management 2 position in the City Manager's Office to support the initiative at an annual cost of $135,000. That's my motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Now it's time for the council to have any comments or questions that they may have about the proposal. Councilman Stark,
Yeah,
jump in.
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. I'm actually a board of director at the Southwest Center for HIV/AIDS. This is really a critical issue, and I applaud you for stepping up and addressing it, and I think we should be a partner in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Stark. Councilman Valenzuela, you have any comments?
Mayor, thanks for your leadership, and thank you for your leadership. This is something that is very, very personal to me. I lost a role model and a family member to HIV many years ago, and I look for as many opportunities as possible to honor my brother and to honor all of those who are stepping up to try to end this epidemic. And I love the bold leadership that is coming out of the city of Phoenix just a few years ago, as we fought to strengthen our anti-discrimination ordinances. And just a few months ago, when working with all of our internal groups to offer transgender inclusive health benefits, and going back a few years in 2012, defending the domestic partner benefits that were established in 2000, where the then governor was asking the Supreme Court to revoke those things. And time again, we are showing that we are this inclusive city, that we value people, and at a certain point, we're playing catch up, and this is all about leadership, and this is all about moving forward, and I'm honored to help chair this particular committee and to continue to work with so many great people in the community that is helping to pave the way. So thank you so much for your leadership, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Councilman, and hopefully if the motion is successful, in advance for your leaderships chairing the ad hoc, and obviously that very, very personal story. I'm very sorry about losing a family member. Obviously, it's a tragic thing, but there is a path. There is a path to end the epidemic, especially in major urban areas, and this is the path. Sadly, many people think that the HIV and AIDS epidemic has gone away. It hasn't, and it's hitting communities in so many ways harder than ever. Our Latino and African American communities are getting hit particularly hard. So this effort will also raise awareness in a big way that the epidemic, sadly, is still here, and there's many things that we can do to fight it. Any other comments by members of the council? Councilman, please. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I have a comment.
Okay, Vice Mayor first, and then Councilman Nowakowski.
Wonderful. Thank you to the mayor and the folks who have brought this forward, and Councilman Valenzuela and Pastor for your leadership role, as well as Councilman Stark and all of the folks, Kirk and others from Southwest Center, who have been working on these issues for a very long time, as well as we in District 8 have had a great partnership with the Community Foundation, which is doing more and more work, particularly in our communities of color on this issue. We have a lot to build on, but still a lot of work to be done. One of the things that was striking to me this weekend at the AIDS Walk was how many of the people wearing the red fighter shirts who had self-disclosed that they were living with HIV or AIDS were young people. And so we still have a real need for this type of education effort, and I think it will play an important role. We have great advances in science and medicine and access, but we still have a long way to go. So thank you to the folks in the audience who have made this their life's work, as well as the people who could not be here with us today. Hopefully, the city will be a good partner, and we can get to that 90-90-90 quickly.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Councilman Nowakowski?
Mayor, I just want to thank your leadership and all my colleagues for pushing this issue, and I just really want to encourage my colleagues, if they have a chance, in District 7, we have the Southwest Center for HIV and AIDS, and what a great facility. What a great service to our community. If you haven't had a tour, I really encourage my colleagues to set up a tour and walk through the facility. You won't believe it. If you remember where the old Channel 12 station used to be, that's where the center is right now. And also encourage my colleagues to participate in the AIDS walk and the prayer vigil for the victims. And Mayor, I'll be supporting this 100%. Thank you.
Councilman, thank you very much for those comments. Any additional comments? So
Mayor?
Councilman, please.
Thank you. And I'll be supporting this as well. Back in the 90s, I was on the original group that looked for the funding for the AIDS virus. That's when, before even people started even thinking about it, it was starting to become an issue back then. And I think a lot of people forget some of the others that were real involved early on. One of the things, and Jim Waring may be aware of this or not, but John McCain helped create a large donation. I'm sorry, I've got a terrible cold, to the organization as well. This was back in the 90s, so there were a lot of people that were involved in this from really early on that needed to be given a lot of credit for the amount of work that they put into it. It's a sick, terrible, debilitating disease, and we were able to, I mean, if you look at what's happened in the last few years, it's been amazing the amount of recovery that the individuals were able to get through. But back then, the recovery periods were just difficult. They had these major cocktails that they had to take. I assume that they still have to take some of them. But back in the 90s, it was just a lot more difficult. It's because a lot of people put a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of people even passed on in that period of time. You know, now we're seeing major successes throughout the country and in the world. So I'll be very much supporting this proposal, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman DeCiccio. All right, with that, can we do a roll call?
Councilman DeCiccio,
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark,
Yes.
Councilman Valenzuela,
Yes.
Councilman Waring, Councilwoman Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallego,
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so that item passes on a 7-0 vote unanimously by this city council. So Councilman Valenzuela and Councilman Pastor, thanks in advance for your leadership. It's going to be a great thing for the city of Phoenix. Next, Mr. City Manager, we have to talk about a very taboo subject. We're all getting older, day by day.
It beats the alternative.
Be very careful how you
We're
approach
all
this.
getting older, and we want the city to be as age-friendly as possible, that people don't feel like they have to leave their homes or communities to age as wonderfully as possible, live as full quality of life. And Vice Mayor Gallego asked that this item be put before the city council and that we work closely with AARP and many other wonderful organizations to be very focused and deliberate about how we can become a more age-friendly community. People can age in place, get all of their needs, social, exercise, community, faith needs taken care of in place. They don't have to move to a senior community on the outskirts of town. I won't name any, but you know, you can have the best quality of life right in the heart of the city, right where you may have raised your kids and family. That's the reason why this item was brought forward. So I want to thank Vice Mayor Gallego for bringing this item forward, for the opportunity for us to participate in the Age-Friendly Communities Initiative. Ms. Jonovich, what is it?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Age-friendly communities, through the AARP network of age-friendly communities, it's an effort to help cities prepare for the trends of rapid population aging. There's several communities throughout the U.S. that are already enrolled in the network, such as New York, LA, San Francisco, and DC. There are 8 pillars used by the network to organize and prioritize the work to ensure that we become more livable for older adults. The first area is outdoor spaces. You also look at transportation, housing within our city, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, as well as community support and health services. So through the process, when we talk about outdoor spaces, we're looking at clean and pleasant public areas, lots of green spaces, good street lighting as an example. Transportation, we really want reliable public transit, city areas and services accessible by public transit, and really looking at how we're transporting the disabled community as well and ensuring that we have well-maintained roads. On the housing side, we want to ensure we have sufficient affordable housing that's also close to services, that we look at the public and commercial housing and ensure that it's clean, well-maintained, and safe. Social participation, we want to ensure that we have a wide variety of activities that are offered and appeal to diverse populations and older individuals. We also want to ensure consistent outreach so that people at risk actually have an opportunity to interact in the social activities that may otherwise be isolated. Respect and social inclusion, this is community-wide settings and activities that really attract all generations within our own city of Phoenix. Civic participation employment is looking at flexible and appropriately paid opportunities for older people to work, and really self-employment opportunities for older people that we promote and support. When you talk about communication information, it's really looking at how we distribute information that may be of interest to our older adult individuals within our city. On the community support and health services, this is a range of health and community services that are offered for promoting, maintaining, and restoring health within our older adults, and the delivery of those services and where those services are delivered. So again, if the city were to take on this initiative, as a part of taking on the initiative, we would sign on to becoming more age-friendly. Again, we would identify and involve stakeholders that include older adults, conduct an assessment of age-friendliness in the 8 areas. There's some cities that take on all 8 areas. There's other cities that focus in certain specific areas. We develop an action plan. You then have to assess and monitor your progress and submit a report each year on the progress you've made, and then establish a process for continual improvement and modification to the plan. So I am here today seeking council approval for the city to join the AARP network of age-friendly communities, establishing an ad hoc committee, and then the creation of the position.
All right, thank you very much. We have one card on the item, Dana Kennedy, who is the president of AARP Arizona. Dana.
Thank you, council members, and thank you, staff, for preparing this report. It's very enthusiastically that I come here today and endorse this proposal as a state director for AARP. We do have over 100,000 members in the city of Phoenix, and earlier this year, we did poll our members as far as how they view retirement in Phoenix, and what we found is our members absolutely want to retire in Phoenix. They don't want to move. They consider Phoenix their home. They consider, even if they've been here for 15 years, that they have very deep roots in their community and want to make sure that they can age in place. And so I think that there's a lot that we can do and be very ambitious with making sure that we bring all the organizations that are already working in this space. I think there are a lot of people that work in aging, but we don't necessarily always play together well. And I think that having the city bringing everybody together would really allow us to really lift us up together and work together well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana, for those comments. Is anyone else in the audience wishing to comment on item number 3, Phoenix Joining Age-Friendly Communities Initiative? All right, I will also then, since Council or Vice Mayor Gallego asked me to put this on the agenda, I agreed I would like to throw a motion on the table and then see if there are any comments. I've spoken to a couple of our council colleagues to see if they'd be willing to serve as chair of an ad hoc committee, and thankfully both agreed to do so. I didn't have any particular order or reason other than they are the 2 council members with the strongest stamina on our city council. All right. You're wondering who we're gonna say. All right, so I make a motion as mayor that the city council join the ARP network of age-friendly communities, establish an ad hoc committee chaired by Vice Mayor Kate Gallego and City Councilwoman Thelda Williams, and create an MA2 position in the city manager's office to oversee the initiative at an annual cost of $135,000. That's the motion. Is there a second? So there's a motion and a second. Vice Mayor, do you have any comments?
I do. Thank you so much for moving this forward. I think it'll be a great opportunity for our city, and not just for our older adults, but so many of these programs make sense for people of all ages. I had the opportunity to attend an AARP Livable Cities Conference last week and learned a lot about what the best practices are, not just across the country, but across the globe. And it was many of the same things we hear from people of all ages in our community. Seniors who want to age in place want to be near great parks, great recreation, job opportunities, healthy food, and that's the same thing we hear from millennials. So I think this will be a real win for our entire city. It was wonderful to see some of the great feedback we got from AARP's study of our older residents of Phoenix. We got some great grades on a variety of different areas, including well-maintained homes. Congratulations to neighborhood services, a good healthcare system, some good reviews of our street department, including easy-to-read signs. There were even seniors who felt we were doing a good job enforcing speed limits, although they do not all live in my district. But we did have some areas that the study said we could improve on, and number one, the biggest gap they identified was in workforce issues. So could we do more to make sure that there are flexible job opportunities for seniors, that adults over 50 have good job training opportunities to get the skills they need? And that seems like such a great opportunity. Right now, we're working on our workforce strategy for the city of Phoenix. So we really do have good timing to be able to address some of these important issues. And with great partners, I think these are solvable problems. So I'm looking forward to getting to work on these issues. And I want to thank AARP for being a wonderful partner of ours. We've had great programs from Meet Me Downtown, getting people out and exercising with Fit Phoenix, to helping promote transportation options. AARP was a wonderful partner on Transportation 2050 and helping talk about how transportation is essential to having our residents age in place and be able to be active participants in their community, even if they don't want to or cannot drive. So thank you for your continued partnership. I'm looking forward to taking it to the next level.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Councilman Williams, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank the Vice Mayor for bringing this forward. I know we've had many conversations lately. I've always been a big supporter of seniors, even before I became one. But I've noticed a decline at our senior centers, and I think this is a golden opportunity for us to find out why. I know that over the years, this was very much a key part of many younger people putting their parents there and not having to worry during the day, knowing they were being fed, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't see that now, and I'm very concerned about that. I think working with AARP, we can get more of the word out. Maybe we can come up with more lively programs or computer training classes or whatever it may be. I just think there are some golden opportunities. I have a 97-year-old mother-in-law who lives by herself and takes Dial-A-Ride to go to Walmart. And so I'm very excited that we expanded the Dial-A-Ride service recently in the 2050 package. Always before, people in Phoenix could go to the border and then they had to transfer to another carrier. Now you can go straight to your destination. So I think that's a big plus, but we need to advertise it and let people know, because mobility is so important. I also want to say, Deanna, you do a very wonderful job. You are very passionate about all the things you do, and you have quite a list of accomplishments. But I am delighted to see that you finally recognize that you need additional staff. I've been very concerned. I mean, everything you have done so far is very high quality, but you can only spread it so thin. And I am delighted that you're going to have additional positions to help these go forward, because I think that's essential when you work with all the target groups, all the neighborhoods, all of the factions that get involved in this, because one thing you've learned is how to bring in a crowd to be part of the committee and the task force. And I know you're going to do that again, but I also thank you, and I thank Ed for approving and finding a way to find some money to pay. So I'm very supportive of this, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman Williams. Comments by other council members? Councilman Valenzuela, please.
I just want to thank my colleagues, Councilwoman Williams and Vice Mayor Gallego, for taking leadership here. And thank you, Mayor and Ed. Another opportunity where the city of Phoenix is showing where its priorities are. And I agree with what the councilwoman said to you, Deanna. You are amazing. Your entire team is amazing. You're all doers, and I'm sure this program is going to succeed. Dana, Ms. Kennedy, thank you so much for also stepping up in this program with the AARP. I've had the opportunity to work with you on, as what was mentioned, Meet Me Downtown, which is part of Fit Phoenix, but also AARP has been a strong partner of the Read on Phoenix program as well, and this is just going to be another one, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments by members of the council? Councilwoman Stark?
Mayor, I just want to thank you, and I want to thank the Vice Mayor, too. I had a chance to talk to her last week when she was at the conference, and she was quite excited about it. You know, I'm eligible for a card. I'm just in denial. But Dana, maybe I should talk to you about signing up. Just can't get over the fact that I'm eligible for it. But I do really appreciate this. I think this is an important initiative, and I'm very excited about it, and I hope I can be a part of it in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Anyone else want to make a comment? The only thing I would add is that of all the things that the ad hoc committee is going to be looking at, civic participation is one that I'm as excited as anything else about. As Councilman Valenzuela mentioned, one of our most successful programs we have in the city of Phoenix is partnering with Experience Corps, which is a wonderful organization that takes experienced folks that often have retired from their current position but still want to be super active in the community, puts them together with a child. They go into the schools once or twice a week for an hour or 2 hours or so. It's not a huge time commitment of one-on-one activity with that child, reading for the most part. Then they have conversation about life and career goals and things like that, so it's a mentoring relationship as well. But that one-on-one reading to help significantly advances the reading of that child, the reading skills of that child. It's a hugely successful program. And it's one of the challenges in our society that once people retire, we don't do a good enough job of taking advantage of that talent pool and getting them with other young people so that they can help guide them academically or career decisions or other things. We as a society don't do enough to take advantage of the talent that we're lucky enough to have with our retired or senior community. I'm hoping with this initiative, one of the great aspects of it is that we do a much better job reaching out and asking for those folks that have incredible life experiences to continue to pay it forward or pay it back, whatever we're going to look at it, but to help that next generation upcoming. And I think there's always a willingness to do so. We just don't do a good enough job asking for that help. So I'm hoping that's one of the great outcomes of this initiative. All right, with that, we will.
Mayor?
Councilman, please, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to be supporting this as well. There's another perspective, and just to follow through on what you were talking about, the social interaction part of it. It goes with the seniors as well. I'm blessed right now to have 2 elderly parents, definitely struggling, but the social interaction that they need is critical for them to have a quality of life. I mean, not only can they help provide help to children and youth and passing on their knowledge, but they also need that type of interaction. And a lot of people forget how important it is that, we're all social animals. We need that community, we need the ability to talk to others, and we need the ability to be able to feel important in our lives. And a lot of seniors get stuck in their home, and they don't have the ability to get into anywhere else. So the social interaction part, I think, is critical to their quality of life, especially these individuals that have given us so much in our lives. I mean, not only do we have parents, I think everybody here has a parent, but, well, we all have to have parents. But more than that is that as everyone's getting older, it's just a lot more difficult. There are a lot of other challenges, and they become more and more reclusive. As they become more and more reclusive, it's a lot more difficult for them to maintain a good quality of life. So I'll be supporting this, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. All right, with that, roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio,
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark,
Yes.
Councilman Valenzuela,
Yes.
Councilman Waring.
I'm going to be voting no, and I'd like to explain why. It's the
Please.
hiring of another position, $135,000 a year, just for frame of reference. And I forget, it may be household income, but the top 10% in Arizona is $125,000. We're hiring someone above that for one position that I just, if this is a sort of an outline of the job, just doesn't rate that. We've had 4 tax increases, as I've talked about before, in the last 14, 15 months. I just find that our idea is just to spend more money and hire our way out of it and so forth. I think the current staff should be able to take on these issues. And that's just frustrating me. We talk a lot about hiring police officers and so forth, but apparently we have 135 grand laying around in petty cash to go ahead and do this, when I think current staff should be able to do it. So it's nothing against the project or projects. It's nothing against the ARP. But again, this is a pretty high-paying job, and I just don't see it. So I'm going to be voting no. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councilman. Continue.
Councilwoman Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallego,
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so the item passes on a 7-1 vote. Thank you very much, Ms. Jonovic. Ms. Kennedy, look forward to working with you. And the Vice Mayor and Councilman Williams, thank you for accepting this important leadership position. Next on the agenda, item number 4 is a presentation and possible action on Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport Capital Plan. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. About a year ago, we asked Mr. Jim Bennett to join our team to lead our aviation department, and we tapped him because of his national and international experience in building great airports, starting in Phoenix early in his career, Washington, D.C., and Abu Dhabi. And now he's back with us. And I think this is a good culmination of a year's worth of work that he's brought to us, an assessment of our capital improvement program. And so I'll ask Deputy City Manager Paul Blue, who's also an experienced aviation professional himself, to kick this off with Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here today with Jim to discuss new capital investments at Sky Harbor. Sky Harbor is the largest economic development asset in the state of Arizona and the largest economic engine within the state. It's the front door to the state of Arizona, whether it's for visitors or tourists or for business owners and investors. It is a key transportation asset in the state. I like to tell people who ask me about it, you can get to Southern California or Las Vegas, otherwise you need to get on a plane or take a multi-day car ride to go somewhere else. And so it is a really essential part of success for this region. And then finally, something I think that close to home that is very interesting, the airport is the largest source of excise taxes for the general fund in the city, and sales taxes, utility taxes, commercial rental taxes, and rental car taxes, and produces, and its success produces benefits to the rest of the city organization. Retaining these benefits, retaining these attributes requires ensuring that the airport provides a timely and convenient customer experience. Jim will walk through where we are currently in a customer experience, where we will be in 5 years, and what are the necessary investments to sustain and advance our customer experience. Jim?
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for this opportunity to really share with you a conversation that aviation has been having with Councilman Valenzuela's subcommittee over the past couple of months. As the city manager indicated, when I joined the city about a year ago, I was asked to assess what our facility needs were within the aviation department. In that time period, we've developed an aviation business strategy and trying to figure out a way to make sure that we can, as Mr. Blue has indicated, continue to successfully meet the aviation needs of the city and the state. And as part of this aviation business strategy, we identified 2 major capital investments that we feel should be addressed in the near term. And so today what I would like to do is review these 2 investments and then seek your approval of the items as well as the proposed funding source. Just a brief reminder, the Aviation Department operates 3 airports for the city. We operate these airports as a self-sustaining business enterprise, and actually last year, the Aviation Department purchased over $42 million in services from the city, and we also paid over $4 million in taxes on our non-commercial business revenues. As Mr. Blue indicated, Sky Harbor and the aviation facilities are the largest economic engine in the city as well as the state of Arizona. And we take that very seriously and feel that we have a responsibility to make sure that those assets can continue to support the city's need for access to a global economy. So based on my experience in the airport industry, I've discovered there's some basic things that tend to make an airport successful. The first is an airfield. You really need an adequate capacity and an efficient airfield so the airplanes can get in and out of your community. Next is airport access. You need the ability for the customers to get to and from the airport very efficiently. Processing. You need to be able to efficiently check people in at ticket counters, get them through security, make sure that their baggage claim experience is a positive one. Gates. You need to make sure that we have sufficient gates to handle the aircraft and also to handle irregular operations which occur, unfortunately, from time to time in our business. And lastly, and very important, is customer service. Airport staff need to be trained in customer service in order to provide a very positive passenger experience. Now, at Sky Harbor, I think we do a very good job at the customer service at America's Friendliest Airport. So what we're going to talk about, what I would like to talk about this afternoon is really the other items: airfield, airport access, customer processing, and gates. We assessed the current and future capacities in these 4 areas, and we identified them as the airfield, gates, terminals, and roadways and curbs. And let me explain this chart for you very briefly. The airfield, you'll note, has a green circle under it. That means that there's plenty of airfield capacity, and Sky Harbor does not need any additional runways. Gates are labeled orange, and that means that we have constraints at many times of the day. And what that means for you as a customer is when your flight lands, you think you're going to be early, and then you wind up going into a hole pen because there's not an available gate for you. The terminals are orange, and that means you may have to wait in a long queue to check in at a ticket counter or get through security. And then the roadways and curbs is orange, and that means you may be waiting a long line for a rental car shuttle, or you're going to drop someone off or pick them up at the terminal, and you get in a traffic jam trying to get up to the building. Now, if we look forward to 2021, right now the only investment program that we have underway is the Terminal 3 modernization program. But if you look at 2021, you'll see that we think the airfill still has plenty of capacity, as indicated by the green ball. The gates continue to be orange because the Terminal 3 modernization program part of that program is to close Terminal 2 and consolidate into one building, so we don't get additional gates as a result of that program. The terminal gets a little better, but only for the delivery of the Terminal 3 modernization. The Terminal 4 processing remains the same. But you'll note that the roadways and the curbs are now red, and that means that they're congested at most of the times of the day, and it's constraining our ability to accommodate our customers and provide access to our facilities. Now, historically, I thought it would be interesting, and you might enjoy a chart showing you the history of Sky Harbor. So here's the history of the passenger growth at the airport. The blue line represents the annual traffic levels since the airport opened in 1952. Now, the red line is the trend line. And you can see from various points along the blue line, some years traffic goes up, some years traffic goes down. But the trend is consistently headed up. Now, it's also interesting to note that each time a facility investment has been made, if you see the dot for Terminal 2, Terminal 3, Terminal 4, you'll note that it appears as if passenger activity has increased after those investments have been made. Now, here you see, is represented by this blue line, our passenger levels by month for fiscal year 2015. In 2015, we had a record passenger year of over 44 million customers. Our peak month, as you might expect, was March. Now, the dashed blue line indicates that our average monthly passenger activity is about 3.6 million passengers. Now, this red line indicates, this dashed red line indicates when facilities start to become constrained. And that's where the point of delivering a quality customer experience is challenged. Now, even though a month, for instance, November, even though a month does not exceed or go above that red line, it does not mean that there might be a day or two within that month when you are in a constrained environment. For instance, November, Thanksgiving holidays. Now, if we look forward to 2021, just 5 years from now, as indicated by the green line, you'll see that our traffic is forecasted to grow a little over 9% to around 48 million passengers. So that means our monthly average would be about 4 million. And what that means is that by 2021, every day at Sky Harbor is going to be like a peak day in 2015. And we're going to really be challenged providing a good customer experience at the facility. Now, let me show you what that customer experience constraint looks like for our rental car customers. Now, in this video, it shows quite clearly what a facility constraint can be. Imagine you're a visitor to Phoenix, you're coming in for spring break, you're coming in for the Final Four, you're a business representative coming in to scout out a new location. Welcome to Phoenix as you stand in line waiting for a shuttle to the rental car center. Now, this video was taken in March, but I will tell you, as I sit here today, this same thing occurred 2 weeks ago on a Friday morning. So it doesn't have to be a peak day and a peak month. The Sky Harbor Boulevard capacity and access to our consolidated rental car center is one of the more pressing issues that we have. Now, this is the line at the rental car center waiting to get on the bus to get back to the terminal buildings. And you can imagine the stress level of those customers if they're getting a little close to their flight time and need to get back and get their bag checked and also to get through security. Last year, 1.8 million automobiles were rented out of that rental car center. And we struggle to provide an acceptable customer experience to those visitors to Phoenix. On average, and this is a line, once again, another view of the line at Terminal 4 waiting for a shuttle. On average, 20,000 customers a day are bused back and forth between the rental car center and the terminals. The peak day, March 25th of this year, we bused almost 34,000 people back and forth between the terminals and the rental car center. We operate a fleet of 108 buses. They do a tremendous job, but it's just simple supply and demand trying to move that many people on a bus back and forth. Your wait can be 30 minutes in that line, and then you maybe have a 10 or 20-minute bus ride in addition to the wait. And needless to say, we receive countless emails, tweets, Facebook posts about the poor customer experience. We cannot bus our way out of this situation. By 2021, our roadways, I think, will be gridlocked. And let me show you what gridlock looks like, because we have a brief video simulation of gridlock. Now, what you're looking at is a simulation model. Down in the lower left, that blue is the rental car center. And this is a simulation model being run for when our traffic levels reach the point where they're likely to reach in 2021. And you see the black line keeps getting a little heavier. That's the backup from the rental car shuttles and the people trying to return automobiles, but primarily from the rental car shuttles. And it starts going down Buckeye Road, and eventually it crosses 24th Street and backs up into Sky Harbor, trying to get people into and out of the rental car center. So our recommended solution is to complete SkyTrain Stage 2. Now, SkyTrain Stage 2 would begin at Terminal 3, terminate at the rental car center located west of Interstate 10. There would be a stop located at approximately 24th Street and Buckeye Road, and there would be a new Western Ground Transportation Center, if you could visualize an East Economy parking lot on the west side of the airport, where about half of our customers originate their trip. And then also we would make a provision for a Western Terminal station should in the future the airport need to build another terminal on the west side of the airport. In total, it's about a 2-mile extension of the SkyTrain. Now, if you would, I would like to also share with you the other constraint we're facing with the lack of available aircraft gates. Now, we've all experienced this in our concourses. Doesn't have to be, once again, doesn't have to be a peak day, a peak month. It could be this afternoon, this weekend, or any day of the week. And this is a serious issue that we need to address also, and that is our Terminal 4 constraints. Now, we need to provide a way to provide additional aircraft gates. We have 107 gates at the airport, and they're all being used today. And the airlines continue to modernize their fleets and introduce newer, larger aircraft. And as a result of that, we're actually losing gates at Terminal 4 as they regate the concourses. So today's aircraft that are being used at Terminal 4, on average, are 29 feet longer, 25 feet wider, and seat between 50 and 75 more passengers than when the building was designed and opened back in 1990. And Councilwoman Williams noted this back in June. She penned a memo that outlined her belief that Terminal 4 is in great need of change and or add gates to accommodate the newer aircraft and expansions. Our recommendation is to construct the 8th and final concourse on Terminal 4. This would complete the build-out of that terminal as envisioned back in 1990. This new concourse, and we refer to it as S1, could provide up to 8 additional gates and could also provide us an opportunity to develop an additional international arrivals facility. So as previously noted, this is our current level of service and our projected level of service in 2021, assuming no further investments are made. Now, if the council elects to proceed with SkyTrain Stage 2 as well as Terminal 4 Concourse S1, if we move ahead with that, you see the airfill doesn't change. We still have plenty of airfill capacity. We do not need additional runways. But we have improved level of service in gates. The terminals doesn't change too much. I'll come back to that in just a second. And also our roadways and curbs improve because we've been able to remove the shuttles for the rental car and also develop the Western Ground Transportation Center so that people don't have to drive through the airport to find parking. Now, the reason the terminal didn't change is we believe there are going to be opportunities to improve on the processing capacity of the terminals in the future through technology. Some of the airlines are beginning to introduce now self-bag tagging, so you don't have to stand in lines anymore to process through the terminal. And as those opportunities come forward, we believe that will help solve some of the terminal investment issues. So a proposed schedule for SkyTrain Stage 2 is represented here. And subject to City Council approval, we could begin design work actually later this year and perhaps be in a position to award a construction contract towards the end of next year. It's about a 3 or 3.5 year build, and we think the SkyTrain could be operational by 2021. Now, the SkyTrain Stage 2 is estimated to cost about $700 million, and a major portion of the funding would come from passenger facility charges as well as customer facility charges. Now, passenger facility charges were the way the first stage of SkyTrain was financed, and then the customer facility charges are the way the rental car center was developed and also the way the current shuttle buses are funded in terms of their operation. Now, both of these fees are currently in place and have been collected for many years. The PFC has been collected at $4.50 since the year 2000, and the customer facility charge was first collected in 2002, and it's currently at $6 per transaction day. Now, this is a proposed schedule for the construction of Concourse S1. And subject to City Council approval, we would begin environmental, design, and airline consultation work next year, and then start construction probably in mid of 2018. It's estimated to take about 2 years, and it would probably be finished about the same time as SkyTrain Stage 2. And just as a side note, just shortly after the Terminal 3 modernization project is finished. Now, this project is estimated, this investment is estimated at $250 million, and it would be funded by a combination of traditional general airport revenue bonds and also some pay-as-you-go financing from airport resources. And anytime we look at a program and investment such as we've been discussing this afternoon, it's very important to us that we understand what this does to our competitive position. And as represented here on this slide, we compare our cost to the airlines at Southwest and American hubs. So this chart represents the major Southwest and American airline hubs. Phoenix is represented in red. And even after this program and these investments are made, Phoenix would be the second lowest cost for American Airlines in terms of airports that they serve, and the second lowest for Southwest in terms of their major hub airports. And this is a standard measure. It's called cost per in-plane passenger. So to recap, this is the current City Council approved spending program for our capital program at aviation. And it includes the Terminal 3 modernization, the Terminal 4 international arrivals facility improvements, as well as other major terminal and airfield improvements. For instance, right now the North Runway is closed for 30 days. We're investing $25 million in 30 days to reconstruct part of that runway, and that would be in this program. And as I've outlined today, we are proposing to and recommending an additional $950 million comprised of SkyTrain Stage 2 and Terminal 4 S1. Sky Harbor's in summary, Sky Harbor is the front door to Phoenix, Arizona. These proposed projects we think are crucial for quality customer service. They give us gate capacity, relieve roadway congestion, and serve our rental car customers. Both projects will add jobs. We estimate about $900 million in economic impact during the construction phase, as well as up to 6,000 direct and indirect jobs as a result of the construction process, with more than $11 million in taxes during the construction phase. In addition, after the projects are done, we anticipate an additional 300 jobs be created on a full-time basis at Sky Harbor. These projects are financially feasible. We will maintain our competitive position, and our airline partners will continue to benefit from our low rates. And finally, these projects are solely funded with airport funds. It relies on established revenue sources, no use of tax funds, and no use of general fund revenue. So, Mayor and members of the council, aviation request approval of your proposed investment, our proposed investment and funding plan as presented this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bennett, for that presentation. I'll now turn to members of the council if there is any questions on this item. And we have a few cards here as well. I want to hear the cards and then see if there's any additional questions for the council before we turn to Councilman Valenzuela for a motion. Ed Maldonado, did you provide testimony on this item? Good to see you. From our Aviation Board.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am Ed Maldonado. I'm here in my role as Vice Chair for the Aviation Advisory Board, Your Honor. I'm used to being in court, I'm sorry. Last week at our board meeting, the board unanimously approved this recommendation to come forward to you all today for a vote. I think after hearing Mr. Bennett's presentation today, you'd all agree that it's essential to pass this measure so that we can continue to have a world-class airport and provide great customer service to all of our customers. I'd like to point out that this plan is consistent with previous plans and projects. It is obviously necessary to accommodate the growth of our airport, and it simply makes sense and is fiscally responsible. I would finally say that I think it's important to note that our advisory board consistently monitors all the projects that are going at the airport, and I can assure you that we would consistently monitor this program to make sure that we can hold staff and airport leadership accountable to the growth of this project and its consistent movement forward. So for all those reasons, I'd ask you to vote to approve this measure.
All right.
Thank
you
you.
very much, Counselor, for your recommendation, your service on the Aviation Board. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mayor.
You can call me Your Honor anytime you want. I appreciate that. Also, in favor but not wishing to speak, Brian Amaral, Michael Redwine from District 2, Gregory Torres, Ron Ober, and Steve Grauer, excuse me, I apologize. All right, now I'll turn, Councilman DeCiccio, did you have a question? Or was that Councilman Alcalski? Someone on the phone, I thought I heard, had a comment or a question. Okay. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilman Valenzuela as chair of the subcommittee to see if he has a motion, and then I'll turn to the council members for comments or questions on the motion. Councilman Valenzuela.
What I'd like to do is just, if it's okay, maybe we split this up into two. There's two different projects, so I want to be sure that we're all clear. I'd like to make two different motions for each product.
I think it's appropriate. Obviously, they're both very important projects, but one is specifically for the capital financing of the SkyTrain Stage 2, and then there's a separate, very important project for Terminal 4, South 1 concourse improvements. Councilman.
Thank you. My motion is to accept staff recommendation to proceed with development and all necessary financing for the Phoenix SkyTrain Stage 2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for for staff recommendation as it relates to Phoenix SkyTrain Stage 2. Now turn to the council members. Any questions or comments relative to that motion? Councilwoman Williams.
Mayor, I think the video was self-explanatory on the need. It is very important for us to continue to have this growth. And people who come here will only remember the miserable experience they had waiting on the sidewalk, either to or from the car rental station, when we have the opportunity to make it easy, convenient, and much more environmentally safe. So I definitely thank staff for pursuing this. I think it is something that we just need to do. I think it's something we're absolutely required to do. If Sky Harbor is the engine for the state of Arizona, people have a tendency in other cities and governments to take us for granted. It's our responsibility to make sure it's maintained at the highest level, it's the most efficient, and that it continues to attract business, travelers, and leisure people into this community in this more affordable way. So thank you, staff.
Thank you very much, Councilman Williams. Other comments by members of the council? All right, I just say that, sorry.
Mayor, I have a comment.
All right, Vice Mayor first, then Councilman Waring, and then Councilman Alcalski. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I think this will be a very important project. There is nothing worse than standing in a line first thing when you get to a community, except for maybe standing in a line when you have a plane to catch to go back home or to wherever you need to be. So it will be good to move forward with this project. One of the things we do value, though, at the airport is being a good neighbor. So could you speak a little bit to the importance of good community outreach? Certainly, we will impact city streets that are very important to people who live and work near the airport, and we need to make sure that people are well informed of what's going on and that we're a good neighbor, because when you're doing this type of construction project, it does have an impact on the community as well as the people who use the airport.
Certainly, and Vice Mayor, we will certainly be engaged in community outreach as part of this development program, because you're absolutely right. It will, once it's developed, and especially once the Western Ground Transportation Center is developed, it will change the way the people, primarily from the West Valley, come to the airport and access our facilities. And the goal is to try to get them to stop at the Western Ground Transportation Center instead of driving all the way across Sky Harbor Boulevard. So we're working with, and we'll continue to work with, the Arizona Department of Transportation and MAG and the Federal Highways, who have actually are working on a fairly large and comprehensive plan for the whole western access corridor into Sky Harbor. And that'll all impact ground transportation and how people get to and from the airport.
And there's
Vice Mayor, I would tell you, as a very standard practice at the airport, we expend enormous amounts of energy communicating with our customers and our passengers and employees who need to come back and forth. Some of them every single day, they need to come to work. And when there are disruptions on the roadway or there's construction going on, we rest assure you we'll be sharing with the council as we proceed how we're going to communicate to the public, what are the messages that we're going to carry, and what are the things we're going to do to mitigate any inconvenience that may be created. Because while it is a truism that airports are a construction site where planes take off and land, we need to make sure that the customers, however, are able to appropriately and timely, and employees as well, get to where they need to be and have expectations of what's going to be coming at them when they confront construction, and we're very mindful of it.
fabulous. And streets like Buckeye and 24th Street are very important to the folks I represent, so we just want to make sure we do a good job of minimizing disruptions and making sure, and also that if there is good news, I understand this may open up new developable land that might bring new amenities to the community, which is also.
And the beauty of this alignment for this phase is that most of the guideway for the SkyTrain is built on existing airport property, but not on thoroughfares or roadways. So hopefully there'll be minimal impact, except when we have to cross 24th Street and then go through to the rental car center at that point. But the rest of it will be on the internal airport properties.
Wonderful. And then one of the things that's been exciting about current construction, including in Terminal 3 and just generally at the airport, is the airport's been a partner with us on My Brother's Keeper, our initiative to help our community, particularly young men of color, but all young people, and find good job opportunities. And it's been wonderful to see our private sector partners step up and really go out in the community and try to recruit and make sure that people are aware of these opportunities. But also it's fun to meet young people who are apprentices in Terminal 3 and have gotten the training they need to get those great careers. One of the things we're doing tomorrow at the Workforce Subcommittee is talking about apprenticeships and how we have wonderful people who want to work in our community and construction industry jobs that are available, and we just need to do a little bit more to marry the two. So any good news for us on that with this project?
Well, as actually, Vice Mayor, we're meeting today with Councilman Valenzuela, and we were talking about, as part of this development program, aviation will do extensive outreach to the community, because it's important to us to have small local businesses involved in these economic investments that we're making. And so, working with yourself and Councilman Valenzuela will be pulling together outreach sessions so that we can match up local businesses and entrepreneurs with some of the larger contractors that will be doing much of this work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Councilman Waring?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again, this is a project I'd like to support, but I'm not going to. It has nothing to do with the team who I've met with who are going to be building this. They did a fine job on the first part. It has more to do with some of the frustration of decision-making that I've seen here at the city, and I'll explain. One thing that was a recurring theme, and I had several meetings about this project, was the location of the car rental center right now. Again, a decision made before Jim Bennett's time, so this isn't about the current administration. But I think, Jim, you said to me and also in the paper that you looked at moving the car rental facility, which implies that it's not in the right place for efficiency and everything else. That's very frustrating because I think it opened in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, which probably means a decision was probably signed off on by the council. I assume it was, Ed, we talked about this morning, probably a few years prior. So sometime in the early 2000s, council members, just like me, just like us, sat here, listened to experts who said this is a great place to put it. Now I heard from the company and you about all the challenges to get to the car rental center. Another thing was, I guess one of the first questions, I think it was you said you asked, was why didn't we start at the car rental center instead of the other section, which is already completed? This is a $750 million project. I voted for other capital things at the airport. It's not necessarily about the money, but this is a big ticket item. And hearing those two things gave me pause for thought about whether I should be supporting this, given those discussions, which were a little, frankly, I don't know what other word to use, a little disheartening. You know, the facility, it's not like this facility was built 40 years ago and has been there forever and the airport grew up around it. You kind of knew where the airport was and where it was going, or your predecessors did, excuse me. And we put it here, and now that's been described as problematic. For $750 million, maybe if it was located elsewhere, we could have busted our way out of it and so forth. You say we can't do that now. Maybe that's probably true, but I don't know if I want to sign off another decision that my successors will be sitting here 10 years or more from now and say, oh, you know what? SkyTrain's too overloaded, or we can't do buses anymore. We may move the rental car center and let's spend another $1 billion on something else. So again, it's nothing against the project, the design of the project, or the folks who are working on it, but that's my reason for voting no, even though I understand that there is need for this. The need might be less if better planning had gone into this in the first place.
Mayor, Councilman.
If you didn't want to respond to that, that'd be fine.
Sure, Mayor, Councilman.
I think
these
maybe
guys can talk.
city manager or Paul Blue, I think, was intimately involved in the rental car facility. So I think Councilman Waring was talking about you. I don't want Mr. Bennett to. I want him the opportunity to speak for himself about the location of the car rental facility and its efficacy, how important it is to the airport overall, and the importance of this investment. Obviously, Councilman Waring can reference any conversation, but you have the opportunity to speak for yourself. So why don't we start with Paul Blue, or start with Mr. Bennett, and directly reference the statements made by Councilman Waring about your feelings about the car rental facility, and then Paul Blue, who was involved in the initial decision-making and recommendation as council about its location, speak for himself as well. Mr. Bennett, please.
Mayor, and to the council, the councilman is absolutely correct. We looked at options. One of the first things, just as a course of due diligence, that I think I would have a responsibility to is to look for what are the options other than extending SkyTrain. Could we move the rental car facility to where SkyTrain already exists? And that's not a reasonable assumption to do that because of the size of the rental car facility, the amount of real estate you need. You need over 135 acres. You have about a 2.5 million square foot garage that parks well over 5,000 automobiles. And when you look at the general vicinity of Sky Harbor, it starts to make sense as to why the location was chosen, because it has good access to the highway system. If you look at moving it up near the other entrance on the 44th Street area, you have railroad tracks, canals, and surface streets, and not convenient, easy access to major highways. So as part of due diligence, absolutely looked at it. And then the other question is, a good question, is trying to understand why the system started from the east to the west instead of going from the west to the east. And I think that even now, after investigating that even starts to make more sense as to why it started on the east and going towards the west, because that's where a majority of the activity is. Terminal 4 has over about 80% of our activity. And so we need to make sure that we can have a facility and access that's convenient for the customers that are flying in and out of the airport, and 80% of our activity as at Terminal 4. So the East Economy parking development and having one-stop SkyTrain service was the right thing to do, as well as connecting it with the light rail station. So I think that was probably the wisest thing to do in terms of an approach to developing it.
Thank you very much. And I don't want to mischaracterize Councilman Waring's position, but it sounds like he's basing his vote in part on a private conversation, which you suggested that the rental car facility was in the wrong location. I really want to get right at the point, because if that is not your position, you need to tell the rest of the council what your position is.
My position is that the rental
location of the
car facility is fine where it is. my position was, as a part of due diligence in the meeting that we had, is that we looked at options. Before we spend $700 million, is it less expensive to move the rental car center than to extend the SkyTrain station? And in reality, it makes more sense to extend the SkyTrain than it does to move the rental car center.
I guess I will say the area around the airport has also changed in the years before. I mean, I don't know how many years it's been since whoever it was, I assume the council signed off on where we're going to put the rental car center. So it hasn't just been the 10 years since it was built. It's been 15 years. Ed, we talked about that. I mean, you've been here, I think, the longest of anybody sitting there. So I think the fact that we're even talking about maybe it should have gone somewhere else, or maybe we should move it, it just seems like this is a big operation. Everybody's talking about how important this is, rightfully so. This is a huge ticket item. You know, obviously things have changed at the airport, so maybe you can't move it now, but I don't know how much you looked at what you could have done back then. There's no point to that now, I suppose. But that still certainly gives me some pause for thought. When you just look at it on a map, I think probably a lot of people would say, how did they come up with that? So I get where the freeways are and everything. I still think, given that we're talking about how jammed up it is at the rental car center and how hard it is to get there, it seems like, I mean, I don't want to characterize the company's conversation, but they said one of the first things that was said was, why didn't they start the other way? I can certainly, again, looking at a map, I can certainly see why that's a concern, particularly since we're having this conversation now. It doesn't really matter, it's going to pass, so that's fine. Your comments were also about looking, I think we're also in the Arizona Republic, if I'm not mistaken, about looking at the other option of moving it. I didn't remember the qualifier of, in terms of due diligence, it just sounded like, but I'm not trying to characterize what you're saying, that's fine if that's the way it was intended. But regardless, I'm going to vote no.
No, that's perfectly fine. I just think if in part you're going to vote no based on the belief that the rental car facility is the wrong location and state it here now and maybe even after this vote, I just want to make sure that we're all basing it on the same information about whether the rental car facility. I think the reason why the SkyTrain went east to west is because, at least as long as I've served on this council, we care a lot about business travelers from out of state. We care more about local travelers utilizing Sky Harbor Airport, and going east to west showed that we prioritized local users of Sky Harbor Airport first, and then, you know, we're going to make this investment which will disproportionately support business travelers from out of state or out of country who are coming here to do business in the city of Phoenix. But Paul, I mean, maybe you can clarify, because obviously Councilman Warren, I respect him very much, but if he's suggesting that he's been told that the rental car facility is put in the wrong location, that's in part why he's planning on voting no. You were involved from day one in that project. I was on the council during the time of the project. Is it in the right place or the wrong place?
I did not say I was told that it was in the wrong place. I think I used the word implied when it was suggested that we move it. So just.
No, again, I don't mean to mischaracterize. The suggestion is the rental car facility is the wrong location. I wanted Paul Blue, who was intimately involved in that decision-making and recommendation to the council, to have a chance to explain why that was made. Because I don't think Mr. Bennett feels that way. I don't think Mr. Blue feels that way, that the rental car facility is in the wrong location. It's been massively popular, and that's really the issue where we're at. Paul.
Mayor, members of the council, the process which was and Councilman Waring is exactly correct in his assumption, was started just before 9/11 and continued to pace through the development of the building, evaluated, I believe, upwards of 16 or 18 different sites all over the airport. And it in fact studied this exact location where the SkyTrain 44th Street station is located. And that site was considered infeasible for a number of reasons, one of which was the roadway access, the knowledge that it was going to be more challenging because of light rail's location on Washington, influencing the ability to access the site. Second was the ability to assemble the land was going to be challenging, was likely to require an extensive amount of condemnation, and was going to be extraordinarily expensive to get it. We owned the site where it's currently located, had been paid for principally by FAA noise mitigation funds and airline revenues. And then last, we did this actually in direct collaboration with who were then, although they consolidated since then, about 12 rental car company operators whose business we were supporting and serving. And it was the consensus choice to locate at this location for the reasons that I outlined. And to the direct answer to the question, yes, I do believe that the best site between 44th Street and its location in Sky Harbor Center is that Sky Harbor Center is indeed the best site.
Thank you very
Mayor?
much. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
I'd love to interject here because I was there. And even though a lot of this was decided in 2001, a lot of the debate occurred prior to that.
Sure.
And I'm in shock at what I'm hearing right now. The car rental companies were almost uniformly opposed to moving the car rental center from where it was currently located at the time. The location was a big issue at the time because it was too far away. Now, I'm going to support this because I want this airport to be the best that it is once the decision's made. But there were a lot of people that were upset about this location. So in defense of Councilman Waring, because he wasn't here, you're being scammed, Jim, because this is not the truth what you're hearing here today. And it's very offensive for people like me that were here, saw this, got in the debate, also talked to the car rental companies. Now, I wasn't going to say a whole lot about this, but when I'm starting to hear this, it's piling on, or CYA, or whatever you want to call it. But all you have to do is go back into the notes into the 1990s when this debate actually started, when the decision was made to move it. So Jim is right on this thing. Jim Waring is right on it. And that's all I've got to say. And I am going to support it, Mayor, but it's bothersome when I hear this kind of debate.
Well, no, Councilman DeCiccio, I really appreciate that. But I think the issue that I had was Councilman Waring, obviously, he is an honest broker and can vote the way he thinks is the best interest of the city, the best interest of Sky Harbor Airport, the best interest of the traveling public, any way he wants. What he can't do, I believe, is misrepresent or purposely or accidentally, I think it was in this case, it was a misunderstanding of Mr. Bennett's position. He was referencing statements made by Mr. Bennett in a private meeting that Mr. Bennett had thought that the rental car facility was in the wrong location. I wanted to give Mr. Bennett the opportunity to clarify his own position about whether the rental car facility was in the wrong. If Councilman Waring feels like the rental car facility is in the wrong location, that's his. Obviously, he's entitled to have his opinion on that. But what he can't do is
I don't know who did and said what.
He can't come before this council and say that Mr. Bennett said one thing. I wanted to give Mr. Bennett the opportunity to state for himself what his position is as it relates to the rental car facility, because it's important for all of us to have that information before us as we make this incredibly important vote in infrastructure investment at Sky Harbor Airport. So, Mr. Bennett, I don't know if you want to once again clarify, because I think the statement by Mr. Waring was that the impression was left that the rental car facility is at the wrong location, and I don't know if that accurately represents your position or not.
That does not accurately represent my position. It was the conversation with the councilman is very similar to the testimony that I made at the subcommittee as well as at the advisory board last week, which was we looked at, before making the investment, what are our options? Is there a way to move the rental car center to the SkyTrain instead of the SkyTrain to the rental car center? And just as a course of due diligence, what are the options? That's not a feasible option because this is an appropriate location. You can't find, as Mr. Blue indicated, you cannot find enough real estate, and the access up near the SkyTrain at 44th Street is not feasible. We looked at additional buses. We looked at different types of buses, and even redoing some of the signal timing along Buckeye and 24th Street to flow the buses. You just can't bus your way out of this situation. So as a matter of due diligence, you have to look at all of these options before you make a recommendation to spend $700 million to solve a problem. And that was, like I said, I mentioned that in my testimony to the advisory board as well as to the subcommittee.
Okay, good. And Councilman DeCiccio obviously suggested that Councilman Waring was being, quote, scammed, but I wanted Paul the opportunity to talk about that because I think it's fair to say that the rental car companies, all things being equal, were sort of happy in City of Phoenix aviation parking lots, but we needed that space for the growth of Sky Harbor Airport for the traveling public. So I think once the decision was made that we needed to move the car rental companies off-site, that's when they worked with us in a collaborative way to choose that location. I don't want to misrepresent history, but how did we get to the conclusion? I don't think it is not accurate to suggest that the rental car companies were excited about moving, but once the council made a decision that we needed that space for the traveling public, not for the car, then that's when they worked with us to choose a location. I want to make sure I don't misrepresent how we came to this conclusion.
Mayor, at the
Mayor?
time,
Just a second, I'm going to have Paul Blue answer, then Councilman Cicio, if you want to continue asking questions and make comments at that time. Paul?
Mayor, as I said, there were 10 or 12 rental car companies. All of them, with a couple of very small exceptions that were located up on Washington, were located in our parking garages at the airport, and those ran out of room. And as customer demands in our parking garages increased, our abilities to appropriately meet customer needs as well as meet the needs of the rental car companies degraded. There was one company who was in the catbird seat, and that was Hertz, who had rented off-airport land from the city in Sky Harbor Center to operate a rental car center for its own business. They opposed the development of the rental car facility. All the remaining rental car companies unanimously supported the development of the rental car center. And so that was the state of play when we came to council for concurrence with the project
Okay.
at the time.
All right, thank you for correcting that information. Councilman DeCiccio, additional questions or comments?
Just, yeah, I mean, I don't know what room anybody was in. The room I was in, the conversations I had with the car rental companies, not just one or two, they were pretty uniform opposed to moving from their current location. I mean, like strongly opposed from moving from their current location. They were happy with where they were, and the location was problematic. Now, I don't know what Jim said at the time or not. It's not up to me to figure that out. But I do know how hot and how heavy the conversation was, and it was very, I obviously voted against the moving, but at the time, the location, I don't remember if the location was actually settled at that point, but I'm pretty sure it was. But the bottom line is it was very controversial. It was not a simple move. And the business community and a lot of the passengers were opposed to it. This was not a kumbaya moment.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilman DeCiccio. Councilman Waring, please.
So, the only mischaracterization of comments was yours of mine. I said very clearly it implied to me, Mr. Bennett's comments, both in the paper and to me, so obviously something was said about maybe we should move this or we looked at moving this. Realistically, the first thing the company said to me when they got in my office, or one of the first things that was asked of them was, why, now we've got a new administration, why did you not start at the rental facility instead of the other way around? So I'm not imagining that either. If now it's been decided that this was the best way to do it, so be it. My confidence in decision-making at this city has been undermined by a long litany of either poor or misguided decisions. Won't recite them all. Certainly the airport's had its issues just even dealing with the FAA, which you'd think would be sort of a basic one. So with actually $950 million on the line, I feel like, if there's even a shred of doubt that this thing got put in the wrong place, which is certainly what's implied if you go back and look and think, maybe we could move it now. Well, it's certainly harder to move an existing facility now with a much more developed area 15 years after the decision has been made. That's not something I necessarily want to be a party to. It'll pass anyway, so I wasn't looking for this big discussion. But I will say this, it does give one pause for thought if you're sitting up here voting, knowing your name is going to be attached to something 10, 15 years down the road, almost $1 billion of taxpayer money on the line, when there's even a hint of uncertainty, which is certainly what maybe we could move it, implied. As I said, he didn't say we should move it. He didn't say it was in a bad place, but that certainly implies that to me. I'm not going to vote yes under those circumstances.
All right, thank you very much, and I appreciate those comments and that thought process. My
Mayor,
thought
I have a comment.
Of course, my thought process would be that I would expect my staff is to look at all options before moving forward with a significant infrastructure investment. That doesn't mean in any regard that they're suggesting that the location of the car rental facility is the wrong location. Before they're asked the city council to move forward with an investment of this level in our airport, they should look at all options. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. We want them to do that, as we would on any major infrastructure process. I'll just say I haven't been on the council for a while now. I've had the opportunity to vote for infrastructure investment on behalf of Sky Harbor Airport on numerous occasions, and I could say, at least for my own self, I've never once regretted supporting infrastructure investment at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. It is our #1 economic engine. The airport has served us very, very well, and as the number of flights continue to increase in and out of Sky Harbor Airport, and it is increasing, we have to keep up with the times if we're going to be as business-friendly as a city as possible. There were another comment over on this side. I'm sorry, I apologize. Okay. So,
Nowakowski.
okay, I'm sorry, Councilman Nowakowski, I apologize.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor? Oh.
Do I have the floor, Mayor?
Councilman Nowakowski, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Mayor, just some clarification. There's no general funds or tax dollars being used for this, right?
No,
Public.
there are no general fund tax dollars involved.
And the other thing is, I've been a big advocate for a hotel at the airport. So can we look at that 24th Street and the light rail being that site for our hotel, and also the Brown Sacred Heart Church? If we can actually look at doing something with the Brown Sacred Heart Church that's been there for the last 30 years, abandoned, right?
Okay, that's not part of the motion, but that's a suggestion of our professional staff. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Mayor?
Councilman, please.
Oh, yeah, I want to justify why I'm voting for this. Now, I would be naturally opposed to the light rail, and I was opposed to moving the location of the car rental location that it's currently at. At the time, I didn't think it was very functionable. I still don't think that it is, and never thought it was. But the problem is, it's already done, and it's already made the decision. People made the decision to do that, whether I like it or not. My primary responsibility, fiduciary responsibility, is protecting the taxpayer. Period. And you've heard me say this before. I don't represent anyone in the council. I don't represent anyone else. I just represent the taxpayer. I also have an obligation to make sure that the airport's the best that we have. It is our #1 economic driver in the community. #1. Nothing's any bigger, and nothing even comes close to this. So the reason I've supported this, I'm going to support this, and I'm going to support other capital projects at the airport, as long as they're done fiscally correct. I'm just not going to write a blank check. It wouldn't be logical to do that. But it's because this is such an economic engine. If we want to grow as a technology hub, we have to have an airport 8 minutes away from anywhere in the valley. Well, except for some parts. But most parts you can access within minutes because of our airport. It's an airport we have to protect. It's an airport that we have to make sure is viable. We have to make sure it's constantly upgraded, whether it means it's nice flooring or the right kind of access for customers that come in here. We have to protect it. And it's because it's the future. It's the way we have to go as a community. So I'm going to be supporting this, Mayor. Not because I like the fact that the decision was already made. It's because you have to complete a system, and you have to make it viable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, I think there's no other comments. Roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Valenzuela?
Yes.
Councilman Waring? Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gallego?
Yes.
Mayor Stanton?
Yes, item passes 7-1. We have another motion. Councilman Valenzuela.
A motion to approve staff recommendation to proceed with the development of the S1 concourse at Terminal 4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I don't know if there's any additional comments on that particular infrastructure investment item. Comments or questions? Roll call.
DeCiccio,
Yes.
Noakowski,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Valenzuela,
Yes.
Waring, Williams,
Yes.
Gallego,
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes, item passes on a 7-1 vote before the city council. There be no further business before the city council. Meeting is adjourned.